framework. Hot chocolate, Azure Cosmos, Data. Entity framework, our tools. NET Suite.
Countdown commencing. T-2 minutes.
Jeremy Likeness.
Shay Rojansky.
Jensen. Arthur Vickers.
.NET data. T-1 minute. Thirty seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. We are go for .NET Data Community Stand-Up.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the .NET Data Community Stand-Up. It's nice to see all of you here. Arthur won't be joining us today, so I'll be taking care of the various, transitions and everything, which means expect a lot of mess and technical problems because I don't really know what I'm doing. But yeah, thank you for your patience. I haven't prepared any sort of state of the unicorn, like with nice slides, but just to give a very kind of quick update. So the team is heads down doing a lot of work at the moment. There's tons of work happening on Cosmos right now. We're investing a lot at the moment also in vector databases to make sure that you can use vector databases from .NET very well for AI and similar things, and just all around betterment or whatever you want to call it for EF Core, various improved features and so on. We'll give a bit let's say a better, more detailed kind of what's happening next time around when Arthur comes back. He's much better at this stuff than I am. And today for our community stand-up, we have, I think he doesn't really need an introduction, but I'll introduce him anyway. Erik EJ, one of our VIP kind of community people, has been around, EF for a very long time, is the owner of maintainer of the EF Power Tools, which is a well-known kind of tool. Honestly, at this point, like, you've already been with us, Erik, several times in the past, and it's always great to have you also on the repo and also on the community stand-up. And I'll stop, chattering away, and I'll just hand it over to you. What are you going to tell us this time?
Thank you, Shay. Well, actually, I just want to add something to the state of the unicorn. A little bit of a throwback that a new version of Entity Framework 6.
Oh, good point.
Yes.
Very good point.
Yeah. It is
very good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those of you out there still on Entity Framework 6, consider upgrading to Core. Many advantages there, but of course we know it's not it's not an easy thing, and you probably have good reasons why you're stuck there. But if you are still on old EF6, then definitely consider looking at EF Core 6.5.
Yes. I think that's it.
That's it. We're gonna close the show now.
Let's
No,
not. Yeah, exactly. No,
yeah.
that's enough about old EF6. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, not much to say
No,
there. For sure.
yeah. So I was planning to do something new with EF Core Power Tools, and I suddenly started deep diving into static code analysis of T-SQL.
I'm very interested in hearing about this.
Yeah, so this is what I'm going to be presenting today. Yeah, I will probably just start with one slide, and then it will just be demos from there on, and then we'll take the explanation and history and everything as we go along, because that's probably more interesting than just me chattering away here.
Sounds good.
With that,
should I bring your screen up?
Let me switch to my one. I actually have 4 slides. Sorry, but yeah, let's just bring my screen up. Yeah, it's scary. Yeah.
4 whole slides.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Take it away.
Yes. So what are we looking at here? We are looking at a .NET framework called DacFX, which is maintained by the SQL Server division, or whatever it's called within Microsoft. And this is kind of a drawing that's saying what are the moving parts that indirectly or directly communicate with this framework. It's a .NET-based framework, and it's available both for .NET Framework and .NET 6 and later. So it's called DacFX. And that is what powers SSDT, which means SQL Server Data Tools inside Visual Studio, which is something you get when you install the data, some data workload within Visual Studio. And it's a set of tools that makes it easier for you to work with SQL Server, and including a special database project type called SqlProj, which is managed by SSDT, but underneath the covers, it's using the DacFX framework. And the purpose of a DacFX framework is to produce DAC packs, which then describes the state of your database, and you can publish that DAC pack against the production database. And the magic use of this framework will bring the production database into that desired state without any data loss. There's also a command line tool on the right-hand side of the slides called SQL Package, which basically is the different things that DacFX can do wrapped as a command line tool, and it's now available as a .NET command line tool, .NET tool, called Microsoft.SQL Package. So it's very easy to install once you have the .NET runtime installed. Of course, underneath all this, we see the SQL client, which is the driver that communicates directly with the SQL Server databases. And there's also some tooling in SSMS, which means SQL Server Management Studio. And now there's also some tooling in Azure Data Studio to interact with DacFX and create DAC packs and so on. But that's enough for slides. So let's jump right into a demo. Starting from the top, and then we'll dive in deeper and deeper, hopefully not too deep. But I've added some new features to EF Core Power Tools. There's a kind of maybe a little bit old thing in Visual Studio called Server Explorer, where you can store connections to databases. And back in the day, you could then use these connections in connection with WinForms, forms designers. I'm not sure whether that's still something anybody does, but that was the idea. But it's a place for storing persisting connections to various databases. And it can be SQL Server, but it can also be other database types like Postgres or Oracle or SQLite and so on.
Yeah.
So
I even maintained, here's me interrupting for the first time. I even maintained a Visual Studio extension for a while that plugged in Postgres into this view. So you can have a Postgres database under data connections and so on. So yeah.
and you even updated it so it works on the Visual Studio 2022. So I actually have like a meta extension package that installs EF Core Power Tools and then the Postgres connector and the SQLite connector, making it easy for you to connect to those two additional database engines. So I have connected to a SQL server, and when I right-click it, I have now, because I'm running EF Core Power Tools, I now have some additional menu items here, including this last one here called Analyze Database. And I'm on the Chinook database, which is a well-known sample database. So I'm running this now. It's looking at the schema of this database, and then it's creating behind the scenes, it's creating a DacPack and then analyzing that. But the outcome of it is actually this HTML report, which points to some design issues that your database may have. So this sample database, according to this set of rules, this looks like this database also has room for improvement. So that's like the teaser really of getting started with doing this, because naturally you would like to have this as part of your build process and your continuous integration process rather than just a static HTML report. But it will give you some ideas about maybe you should have a closer look at some things that could be improved.
Are the actual rules something that you did, or have you integrated with some SQL Server tool that reports these problems?
Yeah, I'm integrating with some SQL Server tools that report these problems. So well, let's have a little bit of let's dive one step deeper. So I'm in Visual Studio now. I don't know if you can see over here. I have a database project called SQL. I called it SqlProj. I know it's a silly name. And then I have another database project called XPlat. We'll get back to what this other one is in a little while. But this is like if you go into, say, a file, new database project, this is the project type you get. And it contains the scripts that describes the schema of my database. And if I build this project, it will check that I'm not referencing columns that do not exist in my database. It will, when the build process will fail, if I, for example, mistype a column name and things like that, or if I try to create a foreign key that points to a column that doesn't exist. So that's the build process of it. So I have a movie which describes a instance of a film, and a screening which is actual showing of a film, and have a little bit of a quirky column name here with a star in it for some reason. And then I have a theater table, and I also have a stored procedure called get screenings, which selects the screenings on a particular day and does some casting and so on. If I build this, I will get a DacPack. We're not here to talk about DacPacks, but I'm just saying this code analysis feature you get that by virtue of having your database under source control. Whether you actually use the DacPack for anything, it's kind of up to you. But you need your database in a project either of this type or the other type. We will get back to what that other type is. So right now, if I build this, it will just create a DacPack, as we can see down here, but it doesn't really say there's something wrong with this. And I saw some things that what is this? Select stars, not good. This quirky column down here doesn't look good. There's a lot of things about this database design that could potentially be improved. So in order to switch on the code analysis, I go into properties, and I simply go down to the code analysis tab down here and say enable code analysis on build.
Okay, so here you're basically integrating into the build process of SqlProj files, which can produce DacFX.
Correct.
To
Yes.
summarize.
And part of the build process, once the initial build process, the process that actually checks whether I'm not confirms that I'm not referencing objects that don't exist and things like that. Once we pass that step and the package is valid, then some opinionated rules have been created about what you should not or should be doing. So it's a little bit like Roslyn analyzers in my perspective, because even without Roslyn analyzers, you can create an application that can run, might not run extremely well, but it will still run. It's not a runtime breaking thing you're doing wrong, but it's an opinion about things you should consider doing better. And I have been doing projects with Roslyn Analyzer. You always end up as a team deciding we want to adapt these rules and some of the rules, because we're doing things the way we're doing, we will not apply, so we can disable them, of course.
I really like this analogy of like a source, basically like a Roslyn source analyzer, but for database projects. That's a really compelling idea. Yeah, that's a really nice idea.
Yeah, and I know you're also working with analyzers in the EF Core code base, and you have opinions about what rules make sense for you as a team. So it will be the same here. So when I enable this, Microsoft provides some rules. I don't know, 15, 20 rules approximately, that will be applied and be inspected against this SQL code base. So if I run the build here,
very cool.
Yes, and it's kind of, this feature was introduced in like 2010 area, where a special version of Visual Studio was launched called DataDude, and since then it's kind of been almost forgotten. And I'll tell you why in a little while. Now we actually got some errors from this analysis here. It says it doesn't like objects with special characters, and we shouldn't call our stored procedures SP in front, and we shouldn't do select star. Makes sense? So
That's very nice. You can even make these warnings as errors if you want, right? I'm guessing.
Yeah, you can make these warnings as errors. If you go back to this screen, simply check here, treat warnings as errors. And you can also do it for each individual. So that will apply to this whole group of rules, and you can also do it for the individual rules. And you can also disable rules. So like, I am actually a big fan of select star, so now I will just I will not get any analyzer warnings because I've just disabled this rule. So what this tweaking of the rules does in the project file, this is like an old school C# .NET framework project file, but let's just have a quick
This brings back some memories.
Indeed.
Oh yeah.
So it has this quirky syntax of adding a minus for the rules that we have disabled, and then so it will just append to this list with semicolons if we disable more rules.
I see.
Just switch this back on.
Yeah, in the modern world, these are usually managed in the editor config in today's world, right?
Yeah, and that's not something that has been implemented yet in this. So it's kind of managed in the project file. It's a little bit quirky, but this is that's one of the signs that is, in my opinion, quite useful technology has been kind of left in the dust for a while. Maybe somebody will take up and try to modernize it inside Microsoft. But I'm doing what I can to make it more approachable. And one of the challenges with this project type is, as you saw, it's like an old school C# style project type. So you have to run a Visual Studio build to build it. you cannot build it on a Windows machine.
On the command line.
Yes.
There's no like a .NET build for this kind of project.
There's no .NET build for this kind of project type.
Yeah. Yeah, we're in the older sort of world here.
Yes, we are indeed. It's like 14, 15 years ago, yes.
Right.
But, yeah. So, I'm a main contributor to a different type of project that does the same thing. Its purpose is also to build a DacPack. It can also hold database scripts, and I have called this project XPlat. And now I'm going to tell you why, because this is a cross-platform project type that you can run .NET build against.
Okay.
And it uses a special build SDK called MSBuild.SDK.SqlProj, and then a particular version. And this is like something that was added in the new project system, where you could actually supply your own build SDK. So you supply your own targets, files for what should happen before the build and after the build and so on. And then this project type will actually invoke some tool that runs the framework, the DacFX framework, .NET tool that runs the DacFX framework, and builds a DacPack. So this is something that I have been contributing to. I think you also had a community stand-up about this project type with the guy who invented it.
I don't remember this. Okay.
Nah, it's a while ago. Yeah.
It's nice that we've had so many community stand-ups. I can forget some of them by now. That's
yes, I think that's pretty impressive. Yes.
Right? I think so too.
Yeah. So this recently I added this project type can do almost the same as the Data SQL project type can, but it didn't have code analysis. It's something I have recently added to this build tooling. So we'll try to switch it on here and also run a build, run a build and an analysis, because now I've actually turned on code analysis. So it's not only building, but it's actually doing some code analysis. And if we go back to the error list,
nice.
Many more warnings. We like warnings.
Very nice.
Maybe we don't. Yeah.
So the XPlat project basically aims to do, let's say, the same thing as the SqlProj one, except that it's cross-platform and potentially more modern as well. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's the modern SDK style project type, so I don't need to unload the project in order to edit it. I can just open it and work with it like I'm doing here in the editor. And then you can do .NET build, and for development purpose you can also do .NET publish, which it will actually build the DacPack and then publish it to one of your local database engines.
Oh, nice! Very nice.
So that's a nice developer feature. Yes.
Now, hang on. Did I see more warnings in the?
Yeah, you saw a lot more warnings here. Yes. So
what's going on there?
Exactly. So what I did when I was kind of researching this, I was digging into some really old stuff on GitHub, and it turned out that there was actually a couple of projects that had been kind of left sitting there for 10 years. There was instructions about how to enable the rules in Visual Studio 2013. Yes, there was a Visual Studio 2013. It's easy to forget. And then I have revived those rules. I have made them work against newer versions of SQL Server. There were some interesting issues with temporal tables that these rules didn't really understand that I fixed. And this project type automatically includes many more rules, over 50 rules from those two sets of rules. They were created by, I don't know the people who created them, but I'm looking at the commit history and the discussion in the repositories, and it looks like they were created by some people that were very knowledgeable about SQL Server, maybe not less knowledgeable about C# development, but that's not important. The rules are there and they work. So I have confidence that these rules are created by some well-informed SQL Server experts. So they're part of the package if you go the route of working with this alternative project type.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
that's complete community maintained. The the alternative
So
explat.
yeah, the alternative explat. Let's just go to the browser. I have forked them. These two repositories. And I have kindly added a link to the original repository down here in my description. And I have updated them to work with some newer .NET version and .NET framework. So the problem is there's not really a good way of consuming third-party rules. But I thought, well, a NuGet package where that people can unzip and unpack the DLL is better than nothing. So that's how I'm distributing them. And the project, the cross-platform project, actually consumes these two packages. So it's not completely in vain. It is not completely in vain, but it's not really. So to add this package comes with these rules, these two additional rule sets built in. But so you might ask yourself, but if I want to add additional rule sets to my Visual Studio build, what do I need to do then? Well, you can download these NuGet packages that I have built and published, and they're targeting the correct version of the DAC framework for Visual Studio 2022. So the rules, if the underlying DAC framework is updated, it has a new version, you actually need to rebuild the rules against this new major version. Otherwise, they won't be discovered. Yeah. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad.
Yeah. Is this a good moment to stop for a few questions that have accumulated?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So I think I know the answers to some of these, but I mean, we've got the experts. So first of all, you were just talking about NuGet, so I'll bring this one up. It's kind of an interesting take. So with this DacFX project, is it possible to distribute the DAC packs themselves as NuGet packages? So basically like have a database.
Yes, it is. So if you have a database design where you have some common objects in one DAC pack, and then your production database is an accumulation of some other tables and those common objects, then you can actually, with this tool set, you can actually consume NuGet packages that inside them contain a DAC pack. This is the URL for the project in GitHub, and it's described in the world's longest README describes how you can build your own packages with NuGet packages and have like a system of interdependent NuGet packages.
Very interesting. Yeah. Okay. Here's another one that we have. Sorry, that's the one we already saw. Here's the other one. So so we use EF core code first. Is it possible to use static analysis on a project that's on EF code code first? I think I know the answer to this, but
it's interesting. I did a drive run of this presentation for my colleagues, and I got the exact same question. It's interesting. It's coming.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yes, you can do it, because you can publish your you can do it in several ways. In EF Core Power Tools, there's tooling to from your DB context, you can extract the SQL statements that creates your DB context, and then you can take that script and import into a database project. That's one approach. So basically your schema needs to be in a database project, and then you can analyze it.
Right.
So how do I go from a code first thingy to a database schema in a database project. That's basically what
yeah.
the question is. So I have tooling to extract the SQL to create all the tables and indexes and foreign keys, this view DB context DDL SQL. And then in a database project, you can actually do a thing called import, a script. So you can basically just point to that script, create a new database project, and point to that script that was just generated by EF Core Power Tools, and then you can analyze that database project.
Right. So that's going to be a bit of manual steps that you need to
Correct.
do, but then you can get to the point where you have basically the database representation of your EF created database in a database project, and at that point you're good to go.
Correct. Alternatively, you can publish your database, or maybe you have it running on your local system or some server that you can reach from your development system, and then you can basically import the database.
Right.
I've done, which is similar to importing a script, but maybe saves you a few clicks. So it's similar to importing a script. Yeah. Either those ways will work, but I'm interested. I haven't actually dived into a lot of this because I'm not really doing a lot of code first work, but it'd be interesting if somebody did this and what the outcome would be.
Yeah. So in theory here, of course, if EF is creating your database, the expectation is for the stuff to be probably correctly and with no warnings, right? Because EF is the one taking care of creating the database, right? But I'm sure that we're probably doing some things that are considered maybe problematic, or I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's also something about some of those rules are a bit idiomatic or company naming standard type of things, and they might not fit into all universes in the known world.
Exactly.
So
it's
So I have a list here of rules I recommend that you disable.
Right. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, that's also always been the case with like style cop and FX cop. Not all the rules. Like some people have this mistaken idea that they should get to 100% compliance of all the rules, where a lot of that's not how it works. Exactly. Like a lot of the rules are really something you may want to think about and then disable based on if you decide to adopt them or not. I'll also say in the EF Core, kind of in the code first, or generally, if you're using EF Core, so for one thing, you're generally not really writing SQL yourself anymore, right? You're writing link queries. So then there's nothing to analyze there, right? EF is the one.
It's only the schema. It's only the schema design.
Only the schema. Yeah.
Yeah. It's only the schema design. You're probably not writing views or stored procedures.
Exactly.
If you're doing that, then maybe you should reconsider the way you're working. Yeah.
Possibly. Yeah. Though we support those people as well.
I know. I'm just saying.
To a certain extent, but yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Here's another, just before we keep going. So this question was a little bit more sarcastic, but I'll kind of interpret it as asking. Yeah. Do we have database project support in VS Proj? In VS Code? Do you have any idea if by any chance, like SqlProj or? There's
a different. It's a file that ends with SqlProj, but it's a newfangled project actually, and that works in VS Code if you install the SQL Server extension.
Okay.
I didn't know you have that in VS Code, and you also in Azure Data Studio. It's Azure Data Studio. If you don't know it, it's kind of built on top of the Visual Studio Code editing experience. But yes, you can also. There's a SQL Server extension developed by Microsoft, and that also includes, or maybe you have to add some DacFX on. That you can definitely do it in VS Code and Azure Data Studio. These types of things, but it gets really messy when they just recently enabled that you can run code analysis, and that will give you the built-in Microsoft rules. But adding rules is very painful to say it politely. So it's like you have to go to the NuGet, where the NuGet package is unpacked in a special version folder, and then place your rules there. I have a blog post about how ugly it is, just for the fun of it. But
well, ladies and gentlemen, you have the expert here for sure. He went into the under the hood.
Exactly. Yes, it was really deep dive there. Yes, but
yeah. On that note, one last question, I think, for this round. more appreciation, I think. How many tools have you developed for the EF community? I don't know if it's a question of quantity. I would say more quality even, but
I try to. I have one GUI-based tool which is called EF Core Power Tools, and I gently add more features to it, as we just seen. But then I also have a command line version of the reverse engineering part of Entity Framework Core Power Tools.
Right.
And then a lot of the things that I'm doing in EF Core Power Tools are also available as NuGet packages, just to give you as a developer as much flexibility as possible. So, for example, the ability to reverse engineer a DacFX into an EF Core DB context, that's available as a NuGet package, so you can actually integrate that with a standard EF Core command line tooling.
Interesting.
Just to mention an example.
Yeah. So I have to say, just from a cross-database perspective, because I'm the Postgres guy and so on, this is actually an interesting thing that is very SQL Server specific that we don't have in other databases in general.
Yeah,
sort of
unfortunately,
very deep integration with with the IDE, in this case Visual Studio and so on, like this specific sort of idea that you have a project that represents your database in a way, and you're working with it inside the IDE in that way, is something that I'm not familiar with in any other database. It's an example of this sort of very deep integration that Microsoft does between its products sometimes. It's interesting.
I think it makes working with I don't have anything against Postgres at all, but I think it makes working with SQL Server extremely attractive, having this incredible, basically, tool set available to you. So
it's very cool.
Just as
if you want to continue, I don't have any more questions.
No, that's fine. I actually implemented mapping of Postgres stored procedures recently, so I'm not completely unfamiliar with it. Finally. So
we do actually have one more thing. Sorry, that just popped up.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, that's okay.
No, absolutely.
It's just it connects so well to the things that we just discussed, and the question is, how about using DacFX for migrations instead of EF migrations in production? Like basically, EF has its own story for migrations, which is of course not connected to DacFX in any way. But how about doing this instead?
Yeah, that's my preferred approach, as I hinted at earlier. So what EF Core Power Tools allows you to do is you have a database project in your solution, and then you have some C# code, some class libraries, or maybe just a web API and then you can actually generate the DB context and your entity classes by pointing to your database project when you're doing reverse engineering, and you can keep it updated by making schema changes to your database project, and then rerunning reverse engineering. Those new columns will appear in your classes and so on. And then, of course, there's plenty of tooling. I mentioned the SQL package command line tool, but there's also built-in tasks in both GitHub Actions and Azure DevOps tasks to deploy a DacFX against a production database.
All right.
So, yes.
Okay. I'm letting you continue now. No more interruption for
the rest of it is not so interesting. We basically have made the gist of it, but I just want to show that you can actually create your own rules. So
interesting.
We finished off for saying there's only these 15 Microsoft rules in this project type, and I would just mention that I said it was pretty painful to get some other rules into Visual Studio Code and Azure Data Studio. It is possible to get some custom rules into a database project, but those rules have to be placed under program files, Microsoft Visual Studio somewhere, which is a place you would not normally yourself as a user on your system write any files, which makes it kind of a, I don't know what to say, anti-pattern or not ideal experience, because it's like you go into a folder and you get a lot of warnings saying, yes, are you sure you actually want to copy some files here, some DLL files in here? I have documented in my blog post where you should put your files, but that also poses the challenge that, yeah, maybe you're able to do that on your development machine. But what if you would like these rules, these additional rule sets that adds a lot of value that I have just updated? What if you actually would like to run them in your pipeline on a build agent that you don't manage yourself? It's basically not possible, because you cannot copy files to C program files on that build agent.
Right.
You will not get away with that. So.
Right. Yeah, that's unfortunate.
That's very unfortunate. Yes.
I can definitely see, like, let's say you have some sort of company-wide whatever standards for how things should look like, and then you want to enforce these at the CI level, right? That's like the classical sort of scenario.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
But with this, if you pick this project type, and this project, if you notice down here, so I have both the nice editing experience here that we saw here with a nice grid and so on, and I have a build project, and I'm actually just referring to the same set of files in the other project.
Best of both worlds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that will enable you to have these additional rules that comes built in with this. But this will also, by adopting this project, it will actually also enable you to put in your own rules, to create and put in your own rules. So let's have a really quick look at that. I'm not going to dive too deep in it, because I don't really feel equipped to do that, because yeah. So let's go back to the slide, maybe, should we? So this DacFX framework is actually multiple parts. The DacFX framework itself, like the ability to inspect the schema, compare it, and then create the different script, and create DAC packs from existing databases. All those pieces of code are currently closed source. That project is closed source. But DacFX depends on a T-SQL language parser library. And that project has recently become open source. I can show you here in the rules. So we depend on the DacFX package, and then the DacFX package, let me just zoom in a bit, depends on another package called Microsoft SQL Server Transact SQL Script DOM. It depends on a lot of other packages, but that's not so important in this context. But this is like the underlying library that allows you to do syntax analysis of SQL fragments.
Oh, very interesting. This is very interesting.
It's interesting for a developer like you.
Indeed. Like, well, you know that sometimes we get these requests where users expect EF to actually understand their SQL. For example, when they write like a default value SQL for one of their columns, they kind of have this. Correctly. Exactly, and we've always drawn the line and said, no, if anything that you write in SQL, that's an opaque thing for us, and we have no idea what's going on in there. And I still think that's the right thing to do. But then the fact that you have, I'm gonna chatter for just a bit. Like, this thing is a little bit like how you have Roslyn, the compiler, the C# compiler, which appeared at a certain point and sort of unlocked the ability to understand C# code and to parse it and to really go through the syntax structure.
Treat your code like an object model.
Exactly. And that's always been missing, like a standard programmatic way to do that for SQL for the various dialects, of course. So this is actually very cool. I've vaguely heard about this, by the way. I know that it exists somewhere, but I don't know anything about it, and I've never tried it.
Maybe we could. There's a Microsoft employee who's really a proponent of it, so might be worth reaching out to him, and he might want to come on and talk about it. He's very passionate about it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'll give you his name later. Yeah.
Yep, definitely.
So yes. So this part, interestingly enough, is actually open source. Not that it gets a lot of open source attention because it's kind of, it's there and it's hopefully working. If they introduce new language elements, there's a bug and it needs to be fixed, and that's about it. So I have created a project here that I'm also sharing on GitHub, and it allows you to create rules that apply both to .NET Universe, the cross-plat project type, and also applies to Visual Studio. So the rules that this project creates are available in both places because I'm multi-targeting. So I'm actually, when I'm building, I'm actually producing 2 DLL files, one in a .NET 8.0 folder and one in a .NET 4.7.2 folder. That's basically how it works. And then in addition to doing that, the DLL file also needs to be strongly named. At least for .NET framework, haven't actually experimented with not doing this for .NET. And it says signing here. It has nothing to do with signing. I don't know why it says sign assembly here, but yeah, it's an old thing. It's nothing to do with code signing or certificates or anything like that. You basically create this key.snk file, and then that makes that gives a DLL a strong name. Yes.
Yeah. This was big in the .NET framework days, not so much anymore. Yeah.
Exactly. But the DacFX framework will not load your rule if it's not strongly named, and this ensures these 2 lines and the presence of the key.snk file ensures that what you're building is strongly named. And then, of course, you need to reference the Dac framework, which luckily also targets both .NET framework and .NET proper, so to speak. And then you also need a reference to system composition. I don't know why, but yeah, but you do. And then you can actually create your own rules. So they have a framework, so to speak, for creating your own rule. So we'll just very quickly look at this sample rule here. It will look for the presence of a wait for delay statement in your code. And you need to decorate your rule with the export code analysis rule. Don't know if you can see it, but it's actually something that's implemented in this code analysis part of the DacFX framework. So when you have those rule DLLs sitting in the right place, the framework will look for DLLs there, and then it will look if they implement this attribute, it will add these rules to the combined set of rules that apply to a particular analysis run. So you can set, for example, description, and all these things are what parts of what we saw in the user interface in the error list. They bubble up from here. And then you can also set platform compatibility. So like what versions of SQL Server or what types of SQL Server does this rule apply to? So you can be very specific, like it applies to SQL 160 or whatever, which is the compatibility level of the database. Yeah. But this it
really looks like analyzers. Yeah,
it looks pretty much like analyzers, but maybe a little bit old school. Yeah,
of course.
And then and then you create, then you construct the rule, and in the constructor you specify what types of elements in your is it called I think it's called AST, abstract syntax tree.
Syntax tree.
Yes. So this is what you get when you push a piece or a fragment of SQL script into the parser. You get an abstract syntax tree back, and they are represented as different types of objects, so to speak, and so you can specify that this rule only applies to these types of objects. For example, it doesn't apply to a table or an index. It only applies to these things that are here. And then you have an analyze method. So then you look at the execution context, and that contains the model element that the analyze method is currently analyzing, and then it will look at the scripts of that and then pass that in this visitor. Now it's getting pretty long hair for me and probably also some of the audience, but let's just say that this piece of code will actually wait for delay statements in your abstract syntax tree, and then you can collect up some of the rules here and return them as rule problems. And this is what is bubbling up into for example, into the HTML report we saw earlier, or into the build output from MSBuild or from this .NET build project we saw earlier.
I have a question
yes.
regarding this. Is there something that would be a semantic model equivalent of what the Roslyn is providing, or is it purely based on the syntax tree?
Good question. I have no idea. Oh yes, you mean like yes. So do you have references to other does it know about all the objects in the entire space that it has been given, and can it refer to them?
Yes, basically. So for example, if you have like select integer something, does it know that the integer is a column name or that it's a type name?
Not for the fragments.
Giving the semantic information.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but if for the DacFX model, like the database schema model, that it's not to do with the fragments, but that creates a T-SQL model, and it knows about foreign keys, and that this identifier is actually pointing to a column name, and then you can traverse and go to that column name. But I think it's probably a little bit higher level than these T-SQL fragments. But the DacFX framework itself, it contains, now a DacFX contains an XML file, which is a serialization of the T-SQL model, and that knows about all the dependencies and all the interconnections in your database model. And that is what enables it to do the compilation of your scripts. Because if you're referring to something that doesn't exist, it will cause an error.
Okay, good. Yeah, so that's basically something like a semantic information. Good.
That's semantic information. Yeah. That was a tough one, Shay.
You have to be both a SQL expert and also a Roslyn Roslyn model expert kind of.
Indeed. Yeah.
And nobody said this show was easy.
No. So let's try to build the project. We're getting closer now. So I'm building two DLLs, as I said before, one in .NET 4.7.2 folder and another one in .NET 8.0 folder. So I'm just going to open this folder, and here we have the DLL file, and then I'm going to my analysis project, and I'm going to create a folder here with a magic name of rules. Probably is a rules folder somewhere hidden behind there, but we'll just add it to the project instead. Yes, here it is, including project, and I will copy the DLL into that folder. And then I will say that if I build this now, the build engine will probably think that this is like a SQL script that happens to be called DLL or something like that. So I need to tell MSBuild that it's a content item. this. And I don't actually think I need the move up here, really. So this is telling the engine to just treat this as content, the build engine. And then, yes, I've heard the question before, why did you not add the ability to consume a NuGet package? But I think as far as I remember, we ran into some problems because this DLL file actually needs to be copied to the place in where this NuGet package has been extracted to, and there's a tools folder under there somewhere. So this needs to be extracted to that, and I think unpacking a NuGet package will not allow you to do that. So we are in our targets build MSBuild script that runs before we run our tooling. We are actually simply copying this file across and making it available to the build process, to the tool that builds the project and runs code analysis. So let's try. Let's go back to the error list. So you can see all the rules have like a description. It's like what type of rules are they, and you can see there's something broken here in the Visual Studio reporting of rules, like the code does not really go in the right place. But yeah, I think they're working on that. But yeah, we'll try to build this project again, and with any luck, we will actually see it now should also run the rule that we just created, or I had cooked up in advance, but yeah. So this is called, my project was called sample rules. So you can see we get a warning from the sample rules here. And not only that, since we now have included this as a content in our project, and we can check it into source control, this rule will also, these additional rules that we have added ourselves will also run in our pipeline.
Very nice. Very, very nice. So yeah, you can basically code anything up that you want, and in terms of the standards of your company,
make it as hard for your colleagues as you want.
Yeah. I can see some potential for fun and games there for sure.
Yes, exactly.
Like if I want to make EJ's life a bit miserable, then I could drop a DLL with the correct rules, and a lot of fun will ensue.
Indeed. So this is kind of a summary about the difference between the two types of projects. So the old school Visual Studio database project, where you get a number of rules, but not a lot. And this custom rules is a kind of a painful experience with the database projects. You can run rules on a hosted agent. You cannot run custom rules on a hosted agent with a database project. You cannot build it on Linux with .NET Build. But it doesn't have visual designers. But there's ways to get the best of both worlds if you're working in Visual Studio. So, as we just saw. So that's about concludes my little talk here. So my call to action: add your add your SQL Server database or Azure SQL database schema to source control, and then enable code analysis both locally and in your continuous integration process, and potentially rate your own rules and even contribute them back to the community. So I have forked these two rule sets and are keeping them up to date. So if somebody wants to add rules that might benefit everybody, well, they're definitely open for pull requests.
Very cool.
And
yeah,
this barcode will take you to a GIST. Is it called GIST? A little page on GitHub with some links to my blog post about it, about all this. And I think there's also a link to this sample code that I have just shown you.
Super cool. Yeah, it would be nice, wonderful to see, people collaborating and contributing additional rules and building a library of, diagnostics. Basically, that's a really interesting direction. A bit like how in recent years C# has more and more diagnostics with each version, and it keeps getting better and makes makes it easier to ensure that your code is doing the right things. Right? You could have the same thing happening for SQL Server schemas. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right.
It would be even nice if you could provide code fixes the same way you can for C#.
Indeed.
That's a nice point. Yeah.
So then you would say like apply across the whole.
Exactly. Apply to the whole project. Yeah.
Yeah. Rename tables and remove whatever needs to be removed.
Yeah. You can do refactorings when you're designing, for example, in a database project. So, like if you want to rename a column, you can do a refactoring that renames all the instances of a column. But applying rules with code fixes, probably not.
Interesting. I mean, sometimes I also get the feeling that it's risky when I do it in C#, right? I mean, sometimes I always do a commit just before, and I do a diff and look carefully afterwards just to be sure.
Wholesale change of 400 files. Yeah.
Exactly. Like sometimes we do this kind of thing in EF. Like I did a recent one for primary constructors. I didn't even do the whole thing, but these kinds of massive changes to your code base
makes you a little bit
do this very carefully. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, super cool. We're just at the hour, which is very rare. Usually we go over because we don't manage well. No, that's perfect.
I'm just joking.
No, it's exactly the opposite. It's actually nice to be on time for once. That's super cool. So thank you very much, Erik. And I hope people out there, if you're not using DacFX at all, then that's definitely something to be considered. I personally am more from the world of doing code first with migrations because that's what I work on EF. That's completely fine. There's if you're more of the database first sort of thing, then DacFX are absolutely like a great way to to do that kind of, if you're more in that part of it. And then this idea of applying the static analysis to your database first kind of modeling or whatever you want to call it, super cool. I'm
thinking of it as your friendly neighborhood DBA poking you gently on the shoulder.
Super cool. Yep. All right. So thank you very much, Erik. I'm sure we'll have you here again before too long because that's how it works. And yeah, I guess everybody else, I think I'm not sure what we have, if at all, planned for 2 weeks from now, but we'll figure something out. So thanks for watching.